Everything okay, Becky? Yeah.
I got it. Bad.
You're traveling.
And I'm traveling, yep.
I get to sit next to the sick guy.
Yeah, you might. I'll make sure I duck and call. Joe, you should be getting
I got it.
Okay.
That's quick work.
Well, they're good.
Graduated. Their child just graduated.
I tell you what, I like the coolness of this meeting. We could hang meat, but that's my kind of temperature.
Me too. I love that too, especially
When you feel bad.
Hey, yeah, Kim, you better man. Yeah.
You doing all right? Yeah.
Good. How are you?
Smart man.
You know Mr. Baker?
Hey, John Baker.
During audit meetings.
How are you? RSNH.
That's school collaboration with
My son said that it comes at you.
I'm working with Marcus
Trying to deal with
Brown.
education. He's got 3 pennies.
Focus on excellence.
Yeah.
Oh, senior, junior, and sophomore. And it's just
That Marcus.
Nice guy.
Doctor.
See you there, buddy. Hey, Mike. See you, man.
Who was your auditor before?
And she's done really well. That was a great program for her.
That's what I thought. I
Skill, perspective.
How you doing? Doing well.
Depending on how these kids.
Have a good weekend?
Yeah, you know.
Really well.
What I did.
You know what scares me?
What I did this morning.
Yeah, isn't that the
That I'm
truth?
starting to
I didn't
understand.
break
about that.
anything. I didn't have to go to the emergency room.
Well, that's always a plus.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Which was a numbing experience for us.
What we got? Oh, that's going to be a little presentation we're going to do. Man, we came out of a room where there's a little stuffy up here on third floor.
I had to tell her
Chiller
what
box
to do.
down here.
You?
I do too, but
Don't go in the brown room.
That's right. And don't leave the F word.
I got some coffee. I got some coffee, Joe, to warm us up.
Hard to lay in Philly. So I said, baby girl, she had a blanket.
That lets me in the door.
Pillow, I said, roll it all up. Make yourself
Why do 2 of them?
comfortable, Dad.
Oh, well, I need the magnet. This doesn't have a...
So she went from Philly to Greece. And I said,
20.
But we still need this to, like...
that program helped.
Have one.
She's so
Her went to Spain her senior year.
Can I get one? Yeah.
Do I get a new one, or are we through?
Don't waste your...
Let me call Joe, get the yours, Chairman.
You and Joe, yeah, we're not wasting all those good badges.
Turn you off.
All right, excellent.
Apparently, I already got short timers disease showing up 10 minutes late to the audit committee.
Well, listen, they told me I go after women and children. I'm out.
outside of what he's doing, you know, he
A Region Jackson Ford Authority credit card. Look at there.
Oh gosh, let's go have fun. Come on.
Okay.
It'll take them a day to figure out what's going on.
I'm sure they got sick codes, got locked out certain places.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to ask you if you would please mute your telephones, your cell phone, so we have no interruptions. And I'd like to welcome you to the August 28th meeting at JAXPORT. I'd like to ask Vice Chair Ed Fleming to lead us in the Pledge and Allegiance and a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And a moment of silence for the poor people dealing with the hurricane in Texas. Amen.
I'd like to remind the board members that we will be streaming live video of today's meeting, so please speak into the microphone so you can be heard. Do we have any public officials in attendance today? I know we have a past public official. Dr. Gaffney, nice to see you again. Thank you for your support. We appreciate you always.
Mr. Bowman's down there.
Mr. Bowman is, of course, here. Okay. First up today is approval of the minutes from the June 26th, 2017 Board of Directors meeting. All of you should have received a copy in your board packet, which was delivered, I think, last Thursday. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman.
Is there-
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, please signify by voting.
Aye.
Okay. That's carried. And any public comments? Nancy, do we have anybody?
I don't see anybody listed, no, sir.
Okay, good. We'll move on.
Exactly.
To the presentations. We have a special guest from the City Kids Art Factory with us today. And Doris, are you going to do the introductions? Because I don't see Doris.
Do you have the video together, Mr. Chairman, first?
Okay, we'll play the quick video that shows a little bit of our community partnership with the City Kids Art Factory.
Projects like bird houses, and the student make top hats, and just whatever they want to come up with creatively with the pages from the magazine. They've learned how to create something. It gives them a sense of purpose or value.
It was a big help because we can make a whole bunch of different things. We build a White House out of paper rolls. We really enjoyed doing that. It was very fun.
Like recycling. We can use stuff from that to make something new instead of just throwing it away.
Such a blessing because we're short on paper. These kids can go through a forest, and it was free. Thanks, JAXPORT.
I'd like to introduce Doris Leach, who's just come to the podium. Doris is JAXPORT's coordinator in Government and External Affairs Department. She'll introduce Miss Patricia Hicks Harley. Sorry. I'd like to say that we stole Doris, who I worked with when she was in the city's Veterans Administration, and it's wonderful to have you here and doing such great work. So please continue with your portion of the program, Doris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. The video that you just saw was from City Kids Art Factory, which is located within the urban core of Jacksonville. They provide a high-quality resource and experience to help youth foster a lifelong desire to learn and create and improve themselves and the communities around them. And here at JAXPORT, we love investing in our children and our youth in our community. One of the things that we recognize as an organization is the importance of being a responsible corporate citizen. We do that by supporting programs, events, and activities in our area that enhance the economic vitality of the region and serve the greater good of our community. And with that being said, I am privileged to introduce to you all this morning the current board president of City Kids Art Factory, Mrs. Patricia Hicks.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
And happy Monday. Thank you so much for allowing me to be with you this morning. I am, as Doris has said, the board president, but I'm here on behalf of the students, our young art students at City Kids Art Factory. We want to thank you for your donation of the magazines, as you saw in the video, and they've done so many things with them, including constructing a White House as well as various other instruments of art. But also, we would like to thank you for your monetary contribution. Because of your support and your interest in our community, it has allowed the youth that we're working with to not only move from within the boundaries of their own thinking, but to think out of the box and to expand and to understand that there's more that can be done in the form of art. Our students range in ages 7 to 17, and generally when the schools are closed for sessions, we are open and available to the students. We're located in the Emmett Reed Community Center, which is in Durkeeville, but many of our students, yes, they're from the community, but we're open to all students of interest in the Jacksonville area. One of the things that I would like for you to know is that we have a lead artist. You saw her on the video there, Marcia Hasher. And with her, we have 2 artist assistants that work with her. One is a recent EWC grad, 2017, and the second is a upcoming junior this year. And with the 3 working together with a maximum of 30 students, which is our max that we can hold at the studio, and trust me, every session that we hold, we have a long waiting list. Parents want their children to be involved and to learn and to grow. And with the synergy that comes out of that studio, it's amazing the art that's created. So, having said that, I like to show and introduce and thank you with their masterpiece as to how they appreciate what JAXPORT has done for them.
Oh, it's pretty cool there. Wow. bathroom there that they,
So, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, board. Thank you, JAXPORT. We truly appreciate your support, and we look forward to continuing working with you and the community as we move forward. Thank you. And thank you for allowing me to present.
Ms. Harley, if you could take just a second and describe that for us. What's that material it's made of? And I'm sure we'll find an appropriate place for it.
Sure. What we have here are, we've taken various pieces of china, and it's been broken with your colors, the blue and white. Let me come around to the front.
ceramic tile and the china there.
And what was done, this was originally an outline, and the students took the outline, and as they positioned the coloring to achieve the picture that they were desiring with the water flowing through,
Yeah, so the water flows.
and then we grouted it and sealed it.
Beautiful.
And it took about, this was a summer project. This was one of the summer projects that was done this summer. And it took the summer for them to develop this. But they certainly wanted me to make sure that that you received it.
It's really special.
I think it really is. Thank you very much.
And the back is signed with all of the students who participated in creating this masterpiece.
Thank you very much. Doris, thank you for bringing them to us.
I guess not. I thought Bill had
Okay, moving along. We have milestones. I'd first like to call Chris Kaufman to present Donnie Effler, a 30-year award. Donnie is Building Maintenance Foreman Engineering.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board members, it's always a pleasure for me to be able to recognize the employees that we have here at the port. You know, we're small, 150. Many of the employees are dedicated big time to the port and stick around and contribute for most of their career. Donnie has been here 30 years. Started off when we were the airport. Remember, we were airport seaport and worked at the airport for a period of time doing maintenance and overseeing maintenance from the airport. Pardon me? You can't hear me? All right. Maintenance at the airport, and then transitioned to the maintenance at Talleyrand, specifically focusing on the building of PCOB. He's dedicated. He's definitely one you can count on overnight, on the weekend, whatever the case might be. And it is indeed a pleasure and an honor for me to stand next to him and recognize him for 30 years of employment here at JAXPORT. Donnie.
Thank you very much.
20 years old.
Our next recipient after 10 years of service is Thomas Lane, AutoCAD Mapping Specialist and Engineering as well, also presented by Colonel Kaufman.
Thank you, sir. It is, again, a very big pleasure for me to recognize Thomas, former Marine, who always is good to have on board with you, next to you in the foxhole. As the chairman said, Tom does CAD. We've got one CAD individual that helps us with all of the terminals, all of our property, all of the real estate, and is out there on a daily basis ensuring that we are accurately recording what we have out there. You know, as we've had the APM terminal and we've been working with Amports, trying to take care of SSA, moving cars around. Every time we do this, you got to change the boundaries. You got to put up a fence. Tom, for example, is out there all the time ensuring that we've captured the right amount of acreage relative to the leases that we have in an ever-changing environment. So it's my pleasure again to thank Tom for his 10 years, and it's an honor to serve with you, my friend. Thanks.
Congratulations.
years, we just think we work here another 30 years. Yeah.
Congratulations.
The next recipient whose award will be presented by Mr. Mike Poole is someone well known to all of us on the board because we do interact with him on a regular basis. 15-year award is being given to Louis Naranjo, Director of Procurement Services and Contracts. Louis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, Louis is celebrating his 15-year anniversary with us. In his role, as the board knows, he manages out the bidding of our contracts, bid openings, and execution of the contracts until their very end. And that could be change orders, be it in dollar amount or lengthening the contract. He has to stay knowledgeable of all relevant federal, state, and local regulations. One of the areas as regarding the local guidelines that it falls underneath him is our JSEB program, the Jacksonville Small and Emerging Business Program. We're very proud of that program. That program over the last 3 years has paid out over $13.5 million to qualifying companies, which represented, related to those contracts, over 21% of the total contract payment. So we're very good and when we compare ourselves to the other independent agencies, and we're proud of that program. Louis is also our point person on negotiating rates on all our professional service contracts. In the past year alone, his department has formally procured, when we say formally, we mean putting something out to bid, anything over $3,000 we have to get multiple quotes on. His department has formally procured approximately 45 projects with an estimated expense of over $35 million. Finally, Louis and his team manage our tax savings program, which has recently provided JAXPORT with savings of over $1.5 million. And I think what we've explained that program in the past is to take advantage of not having to pay a 7% sales tax on our capital projects whenever we're buying steel or the various materials on a project. We issue the PO on behalf of our contractor, and then we get to have enjoy those savings. So those fall right to the bottom line, and we've received savings of over $1.5 million. Prior to joining JAXPORT, Louis served over 6 years with the U.S. Navy. Louis, thank you for your 15 years of dedication to JAXPORT's success. Thank you. Thank you.
Stay up there.
Okay, while Mike's shifting his papers around, we'll go to new business. BD 2017-0801, Joint Participation Agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation for Blunt Island and Talleyrand Marine Terminal. Mike, please begin your presentation, if you would.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This board submission is asking for your approval to enter into a grant agreement with the Florida Department of Transportation. It's for $3.5 million. It's our annual grant agreement that we do with DOT, and these funds are already programmed into our capital budget, and for the next fiscal year, it's mainly going to be used for Talleyrand birth rehabilitation projects. At the next board meeting, or maybe the one after that, Chris will be bringing up an item for concrete repair at the Talleyrand, our Talleyrand terminal. It's this grant, because it's related to birth work. It qualifies for 75% state funding, 25% JAXPORT funding. So, Mr. Chairman, at this point, we're just asking for your approval via a board resolution to enter into this grant agreement.
Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
Thank you, sir. And motion's been approved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? Please signify by
Aye.
Are there any nays? I don't think so. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Mike, your second presentation, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair.
BD 2017-0802, External Auditor.
Thank you. And this is the second last item that we're requesting board approval of at this meeting. The existing auditing contract that we had expired with the completion of the fiscal year 2016 audit that the board, I think it went before the April board meeting, that audit. This contract that we put out through our procurement director, Louis Naranjo. He puts out an RFP, and we put out this RFP. 4 firms responded. A selection committee of 3 individuals, Mike McClung, our controller, Paul Soares, our senior director of engineering, and board member Jamie Shelton sat on the selection committee and evaluated them, the proposals. The #1 ranked firm by all 3 members was RSM McGladrey. And we actually have Jeff Zeichner with RSM is in the audience. He can take any of the board members' questions. For the record, this item came before the audit committee, which met at 9 o'clock this morning. The audit committee had several questions and discussed rotation of staff, how to give a fresh perspective, because RSM is our existing auditing firm that's rolling out of their contract. Other questions were discussed as well. The audit committee approved the item and recommended to the full board for approval. Mr. Chairman, we ask for your approval of this contract.
Thank you very much, Mike. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Fleming. Approved and seconded. Is there any discussion? I'll call for a vote. Please signify your vote by saying either aye or nay.
Aye.
Aye. Carries. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
If I may. No. I didn't say anything upstairs because I got there a little late. But I was contacted by a firm that submitted for this process. And they got back to me and said that their firm had lesser submitted price than was awarded for the contract. Board member Baker raised the issue upstairs. I guess I'm trying to say is there's a general perception that contracts go to the lowest bid. When that doesn't happen, I think it's incumbent upon us to protect the integrity of our process, to give a ready defense as to why it wasn't awarded that way. And so I think that it's important. I have no problem with it going to where it went. I'm just saying I think it's important for us to protect our integrity by having a defense for the process as to why it was awarded that way. There's other criteria. I couldn't discuss that because I'm not on the committee, and I said there's a scoring mechanism, and that's how the process works. But I just think it's important because there is a general perception when it comes to contracts that the lowest bidder, as well as well qualified, of course, is important. So I'm just saying that, just a general comment. Not that I'm against the award at all, but I think it's important for our integrity. I hope I'm communicating it properly.
I think so.
The process by which we came to that conclusion when it was not the lowest bid submitted.
It's interesting because I did attend the audit committee, not as a member, but it was brought up. Jamie Shelton, who was the audit committee a member who attended that award and voted on it, gave an explanation, as did Mike Poole, and Ed Fleming had several questions as the head of the audit committee about that, as did Joe York. So it was pretty well vetted. But if you would like further clarification as to the process or whatever, I think we can take the time to do that. And I'd turn it over to Jamie to make any comments that he would supplement that.
Sure, Mr. Chairman, thank you. It was a process of which we went through and graded and evaluated the 4 firms on about, if I don't have the sheet in front of me, I think it was about 5 different criteria. And Louis could speak more to this as well. Initially, and we talked about this audit committee, price was not something that the initial valuation that myself, Mr. Soares, or Mike were able to or allowed to evaluate as part of our process. It was part of the discussion when we came back after we evaluated each of the firms, and not having that in front of me, what the prices were for each of the 4 firms. There was one I do recall that was what I call significantly lower than the other 3. And I said this in audit committee, and I say this today here before the board, and those are out there, and no disrespect to RS&M, and John and I talked about this as well. I view an audit, the court audit, it's just a commodity. So you would think you would just sell it and buy it on price. But when you get into really what's key about an audit is really making sure that cash we have goes right place and cash that we were supposed to receive goes right place. That is the most important thing. They can talk about how their audit process and procedures better than the other one. It's really not. But we can have that discussion. But a lot of it based around on, you know, the expertise that these particular firms had around other ports and other things that had the experience, of the experience level, their personnel. One of the criteria which was established was their proximity to our physical location. And that was not something that as the evaluator we were, it was given to us as one that we would evaluate. So the process I felt as coming from that world and understanding it the way that I think that I do after years with Arthur Anderson, I thought the evaluation process was a good process to go through, and I think that Paul and Michael Poole and those guys could defend that if questioned on that in the future.
Okay. You know,
thank you for that. Ed, would you like to add anything?
Well, I mean, I have a quick question maybe for Lewis. When you put the RFP out, do you put what the grading criteria is going to be?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so they know in advance that this is how they're going to be graded?
Absolutely.
Okay, and they know price is a smaller grade than some other, than qualifications, et cetera?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so, I mean, if we tell them up front, I don't see, personally, where it's an issue.
Well, let me just say this, and then I don't want to belabor the point. When it's so easy for people who are not where we sit to take pot shots at us, that it's helpful for me when I get a phone call to be able to explain the process better. And maybe that's on me to make the inquisition and ask. And I'll accept that responsibility. But I guess maybe I'm a little sensitive also, and I don't want to bring up the whole Pandora's box here. But I'm a little sensitive about the accusation about we don't have an open process for the public when we've been doing it for at least 5 years since I've been here on the judging project. And now folk want to take pot shots at us when we have a representative from the city who's here. We've had 5 years of open board meetings, and yet folks still want to, come after us. And I guess maybe I'm a little sensitive about that. Well, so when it comes to anything where folks we give them a stick, I want to take the stick away. That's why I'm raising the issue. Simply as that.
Two things, if I can comment, and we'll open this up to general discussion and drop the formality. The two things are, A, I feel very good that somebody felt enough to call you and make that complaint, because we should be open and transparent to the community in these positions. Now, we can't talk to each other under the sunshine laws, but we can bring this up in the public forum, which you've done. And I certainly wouldn't want, with David Barrowline sitting there, to say board chairman suppresses discussion about bid process, because that would definitely make the paper.
Yeah. Yeah.
I hope you have a sense of humor, David.
If not, we'll find out a little later.
Yeah, we'll find out tomorrow.
Second point is we just gave Lewis a 15-year award because he's done such a good job.
Absolutely.
That stands for itself.
Yes,
we
sir.
had Jamie in there who discussed it. We tried to be as fair as we can, and it was unusual. But because we're a government agency, everybody, as Ed said in the discussion, bidding with the Navy or anything else, low bidder takes it away, et cetera. What was it John Glenn said? How would you like to feel going on top of a rocket that's been created by the low bidder, et cetera? We understand the process.
Right.
But we are not simply a price-oriented deal. There's several things that were in there. And as long as that was fully explained, then I think we've done our job right, as did Lewis.
Yes, sir.
Understood. Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
may
sir.
I? The staff may not like this particular comment, but maybe what we do for certain contracts in the professional services area or the construction area is we get a suggested matrix from our procurement department and bring that matrix to the board, that scoring matrix, because it goes public prior to it going public, and let the board, ask the right questions about are the point system in the right places as it pertains to that matrix, because typically it's what, Lewis, about 8 to 10 criteria, points. And so, you know, to take some of the subjectivity out of where the scores are, where they lay within the matrix, that way we can have an open dialogue about the point system before letting that. And I'm not saying all contracts, but there are some that we probably should involve the board in.
Ed, go ahead.
Yeah, a suggestion, I don't know if you do this, Louis, do you do bidders conferences before the RFP goes out, where you invite the bidders in to take questions, that kind of thing?
We do in many cases. We have mandatory pre-bid meetings. In this particular case, we did not. It was pretty self-explanatory as to what we needed.
But typically you do that, you have a bidders conference and allow people to ask questions?
That is correct.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Eric, I don't think we want to get the board bogged down, in my personal opinion, the board bogged down with picking criteria. I think that should be done at a lower level.
Nancy, are you indicating you want Louis to give his answers from the podium?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I thought so. You're hovering around there. The Black Widow spider. I appreciate it. And we will do that. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir. Just as a point of clarification, if I can, through the chair, Board Member Shelton, you mentioned a significantly lower price and outlier. Just for the record, and I have no knowledge of this, the first and second respondents seemed to be very close, and then there was a drop-off. Was the outlier the second respondent?
Board Member Falconetti, I believe that to be correct. I would defer to Louis, but I believe the outlier, the one I'm referring to in my memory from that, not having my notes in front of me, was one that was a third or fourth finisher in the scoring.
So therefore not the second. It appeared as if...
I will say with 99% certainty, I asked Louis to come to the podium if I'm wrong. The first two, that was, I don't even remember the name of the second firm, they were very close in price, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct.
So that the outlier was one that was not right there at second place.
Okay.
Let me add, because I'm trying to remember the numbers myself. I believe the second bidder was the lowest.
The second bidder, the person that came in second place?
Company was the lowest.
Oh, then I was wrong.
Yes,
Then I was incorrect there.
That is the correct.
I just don't have that in front of me.
Okay.
Yes. But again, it wasn't a bid where pricing was the determining factor. It was an evaluated proposal where pricing is only one of the components that is part of the evaluation.
And that was well explained up front.
And that was well explained up front.
And I think we did what we were supposed to do.
Okay. Well, thank you very much all for the discussion, and Pastor Newman, thank you for bringing it up to our attention. Appreciate it. Now, let me see. CEO update, Eric Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As each of you have read by now, we received a good endorsement, really a tremendous endorsement on our harbor deepening project from the TU editorial board. I think that was a tremendous milestone for us. We also received a commitment from the mayor of our city, and want to thank him publicly for his commitment towards our project as we continue to move forward and work with him and his team for future reference as it pertains to funding. About a week ago, we had a very spirited debate and discussion at our with the city's finance committee. We took our budget before the finance committee. We were successful in getting our budget out of the finance committee after about an hour and a half of debate and discussion. And we look forward to our budget moving on to the full city council and being voted on at the end of the month, at the end of September. Last council meeting of the month, I believe, right, Dr. Gaffney? Okay. Last Wednesday, I was accompanied by Mr. Falconetti, and we traveled to D.C. to meet with the decision makers as it pertains to funding, and we had a very good discussion with those individuals at the Army Corps of Engineers headquarters. I think I would say we were pretty successful in being able to get a better understanding of where the funding lie, where it's headed. There was no commitment of funding, but I think it went very well. Mr. Falconetti, would you like to comment on that meeting?
Just in short, I feel encouraged and more optimistic than ever that we have a great partnership with the federal government and the Army Corps and this administration. So I thought it was a great meeting. Thank you.
Board members, I'll be traveling to Cocoa Beach today with Dave Kaufman and Mike Poole. We will be attending our annual Florida Ports Council meeting there, where all of the ports will be represented. At that meeting, there will be a lot of discussion about the annual appropriation that is received from the state legislature to the Florida Ports Council. So we're hoping to come back with a few funds that will help us on our capital side of the house. I will proceed from Cocoa Beach over to Orlando to fly back to DC. I got a special invitation to the White House this weekend to attend a presentation and roundtable discussion by Secretary Chow, Mr. Mick Mulvaney, which is the OMB director, and DJ Gribbins, who's a special assistant to the president, and he's overseeing the infrastructure project for President Trump. We probably will be one of two ports that have received the invitation, and I look forward to it. And I think it will be a very interesting meeting as we move forward, as we move forward to plan our funding. At this time, I would like to introduce our new in-house counsel and also thank Mr. York for serving on that evaluation committee. Mr. Gilbert Feltel, known as Gil correctly. He comes from, he has a tremendous background, former lawyer at CSX, transitional law at Bishop Tanner. And with that, I would ask Mr. York if he would like to comment on the process and Mr. Feltel in our selection.
Yeah, first off, it was an honor to participate in the process with Eric and Linda and Jason Gabriel and go through the process of interviewing what I thought were several highly qualified candidates. But I will tell you that Gil really demonstrated, first off, a preparation and a knowledge of JAXPORT, certainly an understanding of what we dealing with the sunshine laws, the challenges of a board, the complexities, and most importantly, in my opinion, was a real true desire, because obviously his law career was fantastic, to serve his community and be a part of JAXPORT, and that was very clear. It was very genuine, and I just think that, and the board members have heard me say this a few times, that having a council that is completely dedicated to the board as well as senior staff, I think, is a critical component and will serve JAXPORT for years to come. So I'm excited about Gil being a part of the team, and congratulations on being selected. It was a good slate of candidates that we had an opportunity to choose from.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you. In closing, Mr. Chairman, we are expecting Congressman Rutherford any minute now.
Oh,
so
really?
He may very well walk through the door. We have a tour scheduled with him this morning, him and a couple of his staff members. So if we see him, if you can, of course, recognize him, it would be fantastic.
As is our policy about public officials, I think he rates that, so we certainly will.
That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman, if there are no questions.
Thank you, Mr. Green. On a personal note, I want to pass some complimentary comments on to Joe York for driving this council situation as a permanent member. That was your idea. It was one that took a couple of years to get through. Did a great job on it. And having known Gil for several years in both personal and in professional relationships, you got the right guy. So terrific. Well done on both your parts.
Thank you.
Okay. Chris Kaufman, please, the engineering and construction update.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Two projects I want to update you on. You recall we're doing 6 acres of asphalt up here at the north portion of Blunt Island for WWL. Again, integrated into the release, making money based upon the lease rates relative to that. They should be moving into that either this afternoon or tomorrow. And again, I got to emphasize, we're doing everything we can to move vehicles from down here in the container area out of the way so we can expand our container operations. So that's going well, and looking forward to moving them in this week. Secondly, the work that we're doing at Talleyrand for the sheet pile, this is the end of phase one. Phase one is basically in the center. Phase two, they're starting today. They'll move down to the south. And then phase three, they'll finish up to the north. They're moving down to the south so that we'll be ready to support the Crowley sheep when they come in later on in this calendar year. So that's going well. It's on target as far as time and cost goes. And Hal Jones is the contractor who we've had does a phenomenal job on these berth works. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Colonel, and welcome back from your surgery. You're doing very well. We're all pleased with that. Roy, are you going on the tour with Congressman Rutherford?
I wasn't scheduled. Just Chris.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mike Poole, please. I was going to jockey the schedule around if you had to leave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As part of our monthly review of our financials on the income statement, the balance sheet, I always review them with the treasurer, and that is John Falconetti. Mr. Falconetti, do you have any comments?
Just real quick, I found the financials to be well and thoughtfully prepared. No problem. Great. Thank you. Good work.
Thank you, Mr. Falconetti. Well, 10 months into our year, we're, as you know, at the end of our fiscal year is end of September, so July numbers are 10 months in. For the month of July, we actually had a very good month. We were above prior year by 6%, or $300,000. Still below budget, but at least we were, for the month, we were beating prior year. What does that mean on overall from a year-to-date basis? We're 1% or $400,000 below prior year. And if you recall, when we've discussed this, and I briefed this previously, the majority of that's related to Crowley and the delay of their new vessel coming on board. We thought it was going to be April, and it's looking like more November, December. As of April, when I presented this, these numbers, we were actually $575,000 below prior year. So we're eating into it. And one of the ways that we're able to eat into the prior year shortfall, I previously reported on the shift of the Ocean Alliance from our Blunt Island, from our Dames Point terminal to our Blunt Island terminal, where we'll yield more revenue per box. That shift of cargo has happened, just not at the level we anticipated. We thought that cargo would be moving on CMA CGM vessels, and there's not enough slots on those CMA vessels calling on Blunt Island. There are only 5,500 TEU ships, so CMA's cargo has gone up, but we have retained the cargo. It stayed at TRAPAC. It's going on an MOL vessel, but we're still getting the same lower yield that we were in the previous year at the balance of the fiscal year. Now, CMA is introducing new ships, bigger ships, 8,500 TEUs, but it'll be beginning in October. So we will be getting the additional revenue. It just might not be this fiscal year at the full level that we anticipated. Roy believes that we will, the next 2 months, that we'll be handling more containers, that the stores, the BCOs, start filling up their inventories in August and September. Also, for automobiles, which represents about 27% of our business, new cars are going to be the new years, the new models will be rolling out. So that could be happening in the next 2 months. So it's going to be close. There's also not in this forecasted number on how we're forecasting to be at the end of the year. All our cargo numbers we're forecasting to be up except above prior year, except containers, and we've explained that. The only one that might not be will be cruise The Carnival boat goes into dry dock during the month of September. We know that. We've modeled that. And other revenues. We're showing that we could be in below prior year. However, last week we just got indication that one of the private users on the river is going to be having a dredging event. They're going to be using our spoil site and paying us tipping fees. So that number should go down to where we'll be on other revenue exactly as with prior year, if not a little bit above. So at this point in the year, it's still a forecast, 2 more months. I've given you the variables, but we're forecasting that we will beat prior year numbers. Expenses overall were 3% below budget, $831,000. We did some expense side management in excess of $1 million at the beginning of the year when we knew that Crowley was going to be delayed. In the January timeframe, 10 months in, that $1 million equates to $831,000 in budgetary savings. That's it from an income standpoint. Net income of money that's available to go to our capital budget, our pay-go projects were above budget. Our balance sheet, cash is looking good. We'd like it to be around the $15 million range, which is our 50% of operating expenses. Capital assets net, you'll see it went up a net of $27 million. There was actually $50 million of capital expenditures offset by $23 million in depreciation. And overall, our liabilities, we have our bonds and notes payable went down by $11 million. That was planned. Our line of credit went up by $13 million. That was related to our dredging and dredging-related lands. The line of credit is bridge financing to be taken out by long-term financing. And then you'll see overall our net position, retained earnings, has gone up by $21 million. And that's mainly related to the new capital expenditures. Mr. Chairman, that's the balance of my report, if there's any questions.
Thank you very much, Mike. Any questions for Mike?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Question. Mike, back to the your full year forecast, just real quickly for me as a reminder, I don't have my notes from prior meeting, and just maybe for those in general. When I'm looking at your full year forecast, you know, obviously the number of vessel calls are down, but the number of tons that we're handling, about 700,000 more tons than last year, and our revenues are basically flat. Just real conceptually, that concept and what's causing that kind of inverse thing in my mind?
And it is an inverse relationship. Yes, the vessel calls are down. It's mainly some of the automobile ships are fewer ships. They're bigger ships that are carrying more automobile units. You actually see we're up 12% in our automobiles, but actually on lesser ships. And it's also related to containers. Last year at this time, Tote had a bunch of, in addition to their 2 LNG vessels, they had barges that were being serviced before the second LNG vessel came online. So last year they had a lot of smaller barges that serviced what the new LNG ships are serving now. We've spoken to from a pure revenue, we're down on containers because Hamburg Süd left Talleyrand and went over to Dames Point, and anticipating Crowley to come on over, and as we've said, that's now going to happen more in December. But the positive story is, even with all that, you're still up 6% in your containers. And you might say, well, how does a 6% increase in your containers equate to less dollars? But there's a lot of moving pieces that relate to it, and one of them being the delay in Crowley and Hamburg Süd moving over to Dames Point, where we get less per box. We are forecasting 2 big numbers that we're going to exceed. Containers, that we're going to hit 1 million TEUs. Every year we're hitting records in our TEUs. Another threshold is 700,000 automobile units. We've never had that as well. So 75% of your business, from a pure statistics, you're achieving benchmarks you've never achieved previously.
Okay. Jimmy, you okay?
Follow up. Mike, one other thing, in 2018, because you mentioned, and we've had these discussions, a lot of variables that are contributing to the, what I call the inverse pricing pressure versus what you're doing on volume. Do you see as going forward in 18 and even 19 that those relationships become more in line with that? You do?
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
Shelton. They should normalize, even with Crowley coming in 3 months into the year, everything should be trending in the same direction.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you, Jamie. Roy, I'm going to ask you to just defer for a minute and let me introduce Congressman John Rutherford. Welcome back, sir. It's a pleasure to see you. If you would, please.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the opportunity to come and chat with the board for just a moment. I'm going to do a tour of the facility later, but I really do appreciate the opportunity to be here. I can tell you JAXPORT and what it means to the city of Jacksonville is often in my talking points wherever I go, because I understand the importance of this point to the future of Jacksonville. And quite frankly, I think the future of our nation. The opportunities that we have here at JAXPORT, I think truly have an opportunity, are cutting edge when you look at what's going on, particularly in the LNG. Tote is leading the way. Crowley is now also moving in the same direction with LNG. And I think it's going to be incredibly important as other major shipping changes, the cruise lines, everyone. I think we are going to be part of that future. And I also talk about the fact that Jacksonville is so well positioned. I think JAXPORT and the city have worked together very well to secure those, the proper zoning for the land around this area, light industrial, for those distribution centers and things that will come as we continue to grow our port. And, I was very proud that the Army Corps announced the first $17.5 million for the deepening of our port, which I think is, the next big step for us. And so I just want you to know that I'm a great advocate and partner for JAXPORT, and anything I can do, reach out, and I'll be there for you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Congressman. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I know you've got a lot of friends here and on the board as well, and we appreciate having you here today, sir.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you.
Okay. Roy.
Good morning, Chairman, and good morning, Board.
Good morning.
You received
Eric, if you need to go.
my report earlier. I hope you had a chance to go through it. A couple items I did want to bring, and Michael took away my thunder a little bit because I was going to say this is the first time that JAXPORT is ever going to achieve over 1 million containers, and not including the Crowley business. When you include the Crowley business this coming year, we'll probably be close to 1.3 million TEUs. So we've grown quite a bit over the last several years. In addition, the automobiles, we've never reached 700,000. So this is, again, another milestone. And we're very excited. And I've got, I think, Lisa Weldon and Frank Camper back there. They're kind of the guys that go out there and beat the doors down to get this business. So thank you for your efforts. A couple other items I want to mention. We all know about Bridgestone has a 1 million square foot facility out at Cecil Field. When they first built it, they tended to move the majority of the cargo still through the West Coast, and they started moving more and more cargo through Jacksonville. And now the majority of their business is going to go through Jacksonville. They visited here last week and advised that we're going to get another 200 to 400 containers per month moving through here, and that's 40-foot containers, so it's a lot of business. We're seeing some more cargo shifting down from Savannah. Far East Trading is moving more cargo through us now, over 300 containers a year. It's a local company here that does toys and bicycle parts. Flat Glass, which is a distributor for Lee and Cates, they're going to be moving about 360 containers per year. Again, business that wasn't here before. And Unipart DC just announced that they're building a 124,000 square foot facility that will handle auto parts, mostly for Volvo. As you well know, we already are the distribution headquarters for Audi, Volkswagen, also for BMW and for Mercedes. So we're becoming more and more influential in the European market also. So we're hoping to secure more of that business. Foreign trade zones, we always tell you about the success we've had. We've got 3 more coming up right now. Hans Mills should be completed shortly. Cycle Up, which is a new company that moved in from Savannah, they hope that they've already filed their application for an FTZ. And Bridgestone, who was here discussing the other day about their foreign trade zone, which should open up the end of this month or next month. So it's all encouraging stuff. In addition, we're working on, and Gil, I'm glad you're here, and working with Gail. We've got 3 contracts that we're trying to tie up and hopefully have some of them to your to the September board meeting. We're working with Sionis on a contract, actually 4 contracts. We're working with Sionis on one that we're close to completion, which will involve some capital expenditure from us on the warehouse here at Talleyrand. In addition, Portis, which is another one of the sister companies, Portis, we're working on either an amendment or a new contract for a facility down at Blunt Island. Recently, we had a company that vacated, and we've got 90,000 square foot of warehouse space down at Blunt Island, and Portis uses about 40,000 now. We're going to add another 50,000 to that, so that'll increase the business at Blunt Island. We're also working with a new group on the auto terminal over at Dames Point. We've mentioned that before in the past. And Southeast Toyota, again, capital investment there. We're working with them now. We're getting close on that. Another good thing is, Dave Kaufman goes out and tells you he needs to buy this property here and there, and sometimes it doesn't happen. You get it, and you got the property, and you try to get somebody to move in. The good news is the property across the street that Dave purchased, the 25-acre parcel with a facility on it, we have no less than 5 companies that are banging at our doors interested in operating that facility, or to do everything from car processors to container lines to ro-ro companies to container operations. So that's good news, because we asked you to spend the money. Now we're going to turn that for you. So that's all I have. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Roy. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your efforts and that of your very able staff.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. Great report, Roy. I had a conversation recently with someone who said that, it's a twofold question statement, that at the end of this contraction period in the shipping industry, there will only be 4 shippers in the world. Didn't delve too deeply into all the mechanics of that. But do you have any idea when this contraction period is going to end, and what do you see its impact on us in terms of our growth here?
Well, what you've seen, and we've given the reports on the alliances, how the alliance, and people are buying people, and other people are buying other people. We've heard the same reports. There's going to be 4 major. Right now, you have 3 major alliances, as we mentioned. You have the Alliance, the Asian carriers, the Alliance. You have the Ocean Alliance, and you have the Ocean, the, and the 2M. Thanks, Lisa. The 2M. The 2M consists of the 2 largest companies in the world, and that's Maersk and MSC. They will continue to buy other companies as they grow. That's been their character for a long time, more so Maersk than MSC. Then you've got CMA, which is the 3rd largest carrier. They're in the Ocean Alliance. The CMA has recently purchased APL, which was a large company. And then you've got, on the other side of the alliance, you've got Hapag-Lloyd, who has recently purchased United Arab. So you're going to continue, because the profit margins just aren't as great. You're going to continue to have consolidation, and the question is, who's going to buy next? There's questions: is OOCL going to be purchased by Costco or someone else, being 2 Chinese companies? And that's what you're starting to see. Is Yang Ming going to be purchased by Evergreen? Because Evergreen's like the 4th or 5th largest. So you're going to continue to see this, strictly because the ships are so big, you've got to put cargo on them. And the question is the guys that are smaller are just, I'm not going to predict they're going to fall by the wayside. But the larger companies have the capital. They've got the resources. They're going to continue to grow. And I think you'll see them buying out the smaller companies and just making their pot larger. How will it affect us? It may not affect us at all because, we were concerned when the three alliances were made up that we might lose something. We didn't. We actually gained. So, the containers still have to move, whether it be on, if there's 4 major steamship carriers or ocean carriers, the 4 still have to go to the ports to pick up the cargo, and that's the key. And what a lot of people have finally realized, it's not just the carrier moving to the port, but working with Aaron and his group over at the Chamber, JAX USA and Florida Enterprise Florida, bringing more manufacturers and more distribution centers into this area is what drives the business. If you've got the business here, the ocean carriers will call here. If you don't, they won't. So that's a key.
So,
but if I could say, it also brings out the importance of the deep water because these ships are getting bigger and bigger as we go along, as they consolidate. Even the ships are getting bigger. So that's why it's so important for the deep water.
Through the chair, if I could continue with one last thing, Mr. Chairman. So then it would be safe to say from our data that for those naysayers who would say that because of all this industry contraction that it's going to hurt our ability to grow the port, our data would suggest the opposite.
Yeah, it's just the opposite because the steamship lines are, I keep on calling them steamship lines because that's what we used to call them in the old days. The ocean carriers are still going to have the same vessels out there. They're buying, when they're buying their lines, they're buying the vessels too. So the vessels aren't going away just because somebody gets purchased. It comes together as part of the big pot.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. And it's a good question. Are there any other questions? Any of the other board members? On other business, at this point, I'd like to ask for a motion to approve travel for any members of the board called on to do business.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. That passes. There are no emergency purchases to come before the board or budgeted transactions. Is there any other business? Hearing none. The meeting's adjourned. Thank you very much for your attendance and your cooperation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.